is not in a political party, he runs independent. And so when a man is not in a calypso tent, he sings independent. So I'm expecting invitation in the tent as guest artists to sing for free. Grenada is a real dynamic place. All kind of things happening right in front your face. I put them things in categories and class. When I done a priest must make a Catholic mass. Calypsonians have lost their intelligence. Only Keith and NNP in their vocabulary. But Grenadians, you don't have to worry. To your rescue is me and Jenny. Allegations of corruption so frequently. You have one in every constituency who's going to jail and waiting patiently to see. They made us believe it was Keith, Emily, or Gregory. Corruption should be zero tolerance, but I can see it's given mucho prominence. The rationale is NNP used to thief, so nothing wrong with NDC now. The chief. Bubble and corruption in the NLA. Dick brushing that undercover every day. Allegations of bribery in the south. Dick brush that undercover. He ain't opening mouth. Contractors collecting monies from MIT. Dick brush that undercover so smoothly. Dick brushing everything undercover. He's done in record as the brushing prime minister. Could never be a real country without that thief and ratchet fee. All kind of man spending government money, no transparency, no accountability. Uncle Tilly, our finance minister, was so zealous to throw Andy under the bus. It seems like Auntie Jenny was right. She said take her to court, she'll stand up and fight. Everywhere you turn is bubble and bribery. All dog and cat collecting underhand monies. But if you're not a yellow, you would not get. These are the words of the Prime Minister, please don't forget. I'm on my knees calling on the Almighty. Lord sent Pastor K to baptize NDC. Corruption is now the daily practice. How people with heart could do this. You make Polako go for what he don't know. Dick brush that undercover, alias let him go. The man and his family nearly hit poverty. Dick brush that undercover so smoothly. He told you your partner really siphoning money. Dick brush that undercover so quietly. Brushing everything undercover. I wonder who's the thief and who's the upholder. To see success in this land, we must get rid of all them sticky hands and all them cats who feel they must eat cheese. Richmond Hill should welcome them with ease. People say that all politicians does thief. Some thief for long and some thief brief. But this administration is known for one time, so they regularize corruption. The PM say one pot telling pot it's black. How the hell your mouth could say that? You vow to eradicate corruption, but you hug it up as how man does hug up woman. You increase ministers' salary to avoid them from thieving money. But when wolves put on their sheep clothing, do what you want is thief their thieving. You heartlessly fired a genuine road officer. Dick brush that undercover with a silence because he refused to sign them bubble papers. Dick brush that undercover like vapor. He didn't stand with you as the corrupter. Dick brush that undercover with a silence. He was fired for his goodwill and good character. He's not like this guy and done in the bar. Real papi show with the bill back better. Man from the block became contractor. Sister Glow say the project is a disaster. Can't want say ANC value for the dollar. More than 100 million spent already. Where are the houses to show for that money? They take everybody for stupidity, except those die hard who follow them blindly. Call it how you want, it's corruption, widespread or systematic. Don't try that trick. I know you as an eloquent, smooth talker, but be careful, chief. Thief is thief. Stop hiding things undercover. The repercussions will be greater. Them lawyer tactics will not save you, and people no longer walk Obiana voodoo. Them thing they right up in your face, dick brushing them undercover all over the place. And you seems to be a great pretender. Everything you brushing undercover. You don't see my nice and loving Prime Minister. So we brushing things undercover. Contractors never work when they collect money. Dick brush that undercover so quietly. You want Cornwall technically accusing Andy. Brush that undercover secretly for mismanaging our burial money. Dig brush that undercover tactically. Laco gave you the evidence and the facts. Dig brush that undercover with no contact, but instead he ended up eating the ass. Dig brush that undercover, Laco could not. You say NNP is the worst thing that ever passed. There was bad, but all you could never come in the class. Everything undercover, fast, fast, fast. This guy so is dedicated to my partner, Gun. He said that's too much lyrics for him to remember, so he asked me to sing them for him.
Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Grab your popcorn, grab your drink, your Coke, your wine, whatever you're drinking today. Call the kids, call the neighbors, the auntie, the nenin, everybody. Let them know that Simon Says is on. Buckle down, and we'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, off the bat, last week I had a mix up with the name of the between the two names of the Constitution peoples, right? I said Citizens for Constitution Reform, CCR, and they are the entity behind the proposed constitutional bill. Now, that was an error. The names are very close and alike. CCR is the civil society grouping, to whom I apologize for the mix-up, because I know you guys don't want to be called, was it ICCR? Now, the entity behind the proposed constitutional bill is the Independent Caucus of Constitution Reform. That is ICCR, with persons like Hewitt Lane, aka Headache. Most of you might know who that is. King's Counsel Francis Alexis, yes, and King's Counsel Ruggles Ferguson, and the likes. One is CCR and one is ICCR. That's like CCCCI and CCC, right? So there was a post on Facebook from Cindy Daughter asking for someone to please tag the leader of the opposition, Honorable Emmeline Pear,
because she heard her making a mistake, and those are the Attorney General's words. She heard her, and that is her as in the leader of the opposition, making a mistake in a recent interview. And let me read here what Cynthia Daughter posted. Dear friends, let's be clear. The issue of changing the oath of allegiance was not part of the referendum in 2016 or in 2018. It was not one of the matters on which the people were asked to vote because it does not require a referendum. Daughter is a iguana. There's those out there that are true, full-blown iguanas. They change to suit wherever they are at the moment, right? Now, this is an entirely different issue from changing our head of state and becoming a republic, which does require a referendum. That is Cynthia Daughter continues speaking there, right? Now, guys, whatever it is, it must be in the Kool-Aid. It had to be in the Kool-Aid. Or they must really take us for fools as they continue to disrespect us with blatant lies. Or is it a curse? Pay attention to your screen. It reads, and that is there, the 2016 bill, right? The 2016 Constitution of Grenada, Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, and that is where that particular item fell under, the CCJ bill. So the Caribbean Court of Justice and other justice-related matters amendment included, this bill was included under the CCJ bill. This is what Cynthia Daughter is saying was not a part of the referendum, right? Now, the third line, if you look at the third line from the top, right, it says allegiance will be sworn to Grenada by clause 35 to 36 and 36, right? In a document prepared by the Constitution Reform Amendment Committee, then headed by Dr. Francis Alexis, with Douglas Ferguson by his side, and the Bar Association, in conjunction with TAMCC, captioned with a question: why does this matter have to be put to a referendum? The answer: any country that wishes to use the CCJ's appellate jurisdiction must undergo a referendum, as the courts are established and regulated by the Constitution and other constitutional instruments. Now, go down to the third line before the last, right? The third bullet point before the last. It reads, allegiance will be sworn to Grenada and not Her Majesty. That's in the CCJ bill in the 2016 referendum. Madam Attorney General, that you basically told people not to vote for. You the one, yeah. You campaigned throughout the island. Then you see at the bottom of that document, the referendum day, November 24th, 2016. Grenada Road to referendum. And the other side, for more information, contact TAMCC, their numbers there. And headed by QC, Dr. Francis Alexis, because then the Queen was still alive, and his number there as well, and the Grenada Bar Association, and their number there as well. I believe now that KC, King's Counsel, Ruggles Ferguson, was the president of the Bar Association then. I stand corrected, but I believe he was in 2016. Now, in more recent times, in a forum held in 2023, KC King's Counsel, Dr. Francis Alexis, sitting at the front of the audience, referred as the constitutional guru, was still adamant that we need a referendum to move from allegiance to the crown to allegiance to Grenada. We have no issue with changing the allegiance. The issue here is how it's done without breaking the law. That's all we're asking. That's all we're asking, right? Now, Hewitt Lane, that's the gentleman who said he accepted responsibility for that horrific day, October 19, 1983, the gunning down of Maurice Bishop and his colleagues on Fort George, Fort Rupert at the time. A woman included, the then Minister for Education, Jacqueline Kreff. Listen carefully to what Mr. Lane, Mr. Hewitt Lane, and plan in 2023, Tinker with the Grenada Constitution document. Now, tinker means to experiment with, repair, or adjust something in a casual or unskilled way, often involving trial and error. Why am I not surprised that the Deacon Mitchell-led administration is adopting this draft bill, the number one trial and error administration? Here now is Mr. Hewitt Lane.
So, in discussing this, a fellow colleague had brought up some ideas that he had on the fact that we may not have to do a referendum. There are other ways that we might be able to approach republicanism. So I would like to call on Mr. Ewart Lane to give his opinion on what are the other ways we might be able to approach republicanism in Grenada.
Good night, everyone. Dr. Alexis, and I know that I'm entering into maybe heresy because the Dr. Alexis, recognized as the constitutional law guru, has stated that we need to have a referendum. I just want to point out that this month May also, it is 50 years since the conference, the constitutional conference that was held in Marlborough, Britain. It was in May 1973, and the constitution that we have in Grenada now emerged from that. That's the first point I just want to make, just to mark that. Secondly, it is quite interesting that the dictate, I will call it, that we have a referendum actually came out of an order in council from Britain. In other words, we received independence, we received the Independence Constitution, which was really an annexure to an order in council from the British government. And the British government is saying in that order in council, yes, there was a constitutional conference, that listen, at least on the surface it appears to be saying so, that there are certain laws in this constitution, including the laws governing the head of state, which requires, as Dr. Alexis said, 2/3 in the parliament, 90 days between the first and the second reading, 2/3 in a referendum. Interestingly, and that's my point, in surveying the Constitution, I think it is quite striking that the very clause in the Constitution, namely Section 106 of the Constitution, which says that the law is the supreme law of the state, any law that is inconsistent with it shall be void. Word we hear a lot tonight. But what is quite striking to me, at least, is that section is not a deeply entrenched section of the Constitution. In other words, you don't have to have a referendum. It is not one of the sections mentioned under Section 39 and Schedule 1 of the Constitution, which requires a referendum to alter it. And my thinking is, and I plan to go into it deeper, to even write on it, my thinking is that one can tinker with that section, the supreme law section of the Constitution, to bring about certain changes. In other words, one can say, you can enact following the 2/3 in Parliament, which is required for ordinary entrenched laws. You can enact a law saying that notwithstanding that a law may be inconsistent with, for example, Section 19 and 21 of the Constitution, it shall have effect. Now, Trinidad has a formula, something as that. Trinidad has a section in the Constitution, I think it is Section 13 of the Trinidad Constitution, which allows by a special majority to derogate from certain rights. So it says that Parliament can pass a law which is inconsistent with certain sections, which one may say is entrenched in the Trinidad context, if they expressly say that this law is intended, or notwithstanding that the law is inconsistent with certain rights, it is lawful. But for that to happen, a special majority is needed. And I am thinking that through the pathway of the Supreme Law Clause, which does not require a referendum to alter, one can pass laws which says, for example, notwithstanding that a particular law is inconsistent with something else, that it is lawful. This is just a rough outline of my thinking on that, but I believe that it is in fact a pathway, it is a gateway to making these changes. Now, that's just from a legal standpoint. One may still say that politically we should have a referendum, right? One may say that politically we should have a referendum so that the people can speak on the matter. But I think that that stricture of a 2/3 majority is something that we have to find a creative way to get around. And this is just my contribution to this thought process. Thank you.
You guys hear that? My thinking, find a creative way. I believe. A thinker. To tinker, and I read it again, means to experiment with, repair, or adjust something in a casual or unskilled way, often involving trial and error. We're not tinkering with the Constitution. No, we're not. We going to go, and it's not, and he says to go to referendum is politically, to go the political way. No, it's the legal way, it's the democratic way. And you know, it's sad how especially lawyers, some lawyers, think it's okay to try and bamboozle us, and we're going to all believe them because they're lawyers. No. We could read and understand some things too, right? And I read the Constitution last week for you all, the sections that relate to what needs to happen. And what we need is a referendum. It's a referendum. So how it is, all of a sudden, or let me give you the Grenadian thing, all at a sudden, right? King's Counsel Dr. Francis Alexis, just over 2 years, sat in the front there as the constitutional guru, not agreeing that we should go to the parliament with a 2/3 majority, that we need a referendum. Now, all of a sudden, KC, Dr. Francis Alexis, KC, Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, Claudette, Joseph, Cynthia daughter, they are now all on the same page, right? So that we could bust a shortcut and get this thing over and done with. What is the rush? What is the rush? That's the question that we need to ask and to keep asking. Cynthia daughter, ready to go along with the bill, she asked the people and explained to the people why we shouldn't vote for the referendum, why we should vote no. No, 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 across the board. That was in the referendum under the CCJ bill. But we voted no, right? We voted no. So now they want to bypass a referendum and go to parliament using the 2/3 majority, which is illegal and undemocratic. Lest we forget, in 2016 to 2018, when the referendum was held, the ruling administration had all 15 seats in parliament. So it would have been quite easy for them to go in the parliament with a 2/3 majority. Why did they call the referendum then? Right? Now here's Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell on the whole draft bill saga.
Constitution reform. You have said numerous times that constitutional change is not on your government's agenda.
Yes.
You have also many times spoken about the Grenadian people should be included more in the political process. How then do you justify your government's plans to unilaterally amend the Constitution for the first time in our history to change the oath of allegiance? This change was something Grenadians voted against by a significant margin in the 2016 referendum. A question from Patrick Renwick.
All right, so thank you, Patrick, for your question. I think, first of all, I've said constitutional changes or amendment that is not a priority for the government. But we have to appreciate that the Constitution is a law, just like any other law. Some parts of the Constitution are what we call in law entrenched, meaning it is more difficult to change. And the most entrenched parts are those that require a referendum. It requires you to go to Parliament first to pass the bill. It requires that bill to pass by a certain majority. Usually it will be 2/3 of the voting, or in some cases even 75%, depending on the way it's crafted. And then you still go to a referendum. There are some parts of the Constitution which could simply be amended by a 2/3 majority. The issues such as the oath of allegiance is frankly so low on the totem pole that it is really, in my view, someone who does not appreciate what our history is and who doesn't appreciate the enormous sacrifice made by those who came before us to get us to a point where we have not just freedom as individuals, but sovereignty as a small island developing state, that would think it is okay for us to be still swearing allegiance, with all due respect to to King Charles, his heirs and successors. And I will ask this question bluntly. Grenada is, yes, a member of the Commonwealth. We have excellent relations with the United Kingdom. We wish for those relations to continue. Just recently, as this week, we had the partnership, for example, in the UK SIF with the Southern Wastewater project. But sovereign countries have excellent bilateral relations. That doesn't mean you have to swear allegiance to the head of a state of another foreign country. And that only happened because Grenada was a colony of the United Kingdom, right? So Grenadians didn't vote for a constitution in 1974. In 1974, when we became an independent country, there was the constitution wasn't submitted to the public and say pass a referendum on whether you want it or not. So there is no such thing as unilateral in law. Lawmaking isn't a contract in the strict sense between two private persons. Lawmaking arises from the sovereign power that the people place in their representatives via an election, a democratic process that gives you the mandate to make law. And if the public gives us the mandate to make law, and if the size of that mandate is sufficient to allow us to change the constitution via the regular lawmaking process, there's no unilateralism in that. So when we pass all of the pieces of legislation, isn't it the same unilateral process? So I think this is really a red herring at best, a storm in a teacup, but more importantly, a fundamental misappreciation of what this simple amendment to the Constitution must, in my view, do. And I'm satisfied that the majority of Grenadians support this. I don't think anyone in their right mind will expect me or any future Prime Minister of Grenada, on taking the oath of office, to serve them that I should be swearing allegiance to King Charles, his heirs and successors. I've said it even in political settings. What it is about King Charles that is superior to me, that requires me not to swear allegiance to the people of Grenada, but to him. So if Patrick and any others like him could answer that question, then we could have a debate. But until such time, I'm more than happy to swear allegiance to the people of Grenada, to the state and institutions of Grenada. And obviously, I quite like King Charles, but King Charles should be the king of the United Kingdom, and his subjects can continue swearing their allegiance to him. But there's no reason why, in my view, any Caribbean country should find themselves swearing allegiance to any king, except the people.
Would he happily swear allegiance to the crown in 2022? Right? It was no problem then because you had to get in. He was getting in, it didn't matter. Right? And all of that is babbling, just babbling. Red herring, wrong context, out of context. What red herring you talking about? We having a debate. Where's the red herring coming from? The red herring was when you stood up in the trade center and said that the monies from the Polish man, you had the cabinet conclusion to show that the monies went into somebody's private account. So we're still waiting for that cabinet conclusion. That was a red herring. The red herring was when you said, basically, somebody going to jail or bodies for the faith company. That was a red herring. You're very good at throwing red herrings. And up to now, you don't know the context in which it lies. Come on now. Come on now. Just to use words. Lot of words to confuse the unassuming. But it ain't working no more. It ain't working no more. Again, what's the rush? You yourself said it's not a priority. So why are we rushing? Why are we rushing? Simon says continue to monitor this constitutional amendment bill that this administration and their friends are trying to pass in the parliament. Now, so a number of persons sent me this clip that I'm going to share with you shortly. The truth is, to me, it was laughable. Context, she said. It's out of context, or there's no context. Let's hear the clip.
A few days ago, I was listening to the the minister of MIT, and he was saying that they going on the block and pick up some people, and they learn a two, I think, as they say, a thing or two of from construction, and before you know it, they're building houses, they do the electrical work, and they're doing plumbing. And I'm saying, Lord have mercy, because
Well, you know, Mr. Batiste, let me stop you here. I saw that video too, and what I noticed is that there is no context. If we're talking about the same video that was cut and the Minister of Finance speaks and then the Minister of MIT speaks and then the Minister of Social Development speaks, that are a series of clips that was put together that does not really provide context for the comments that were being made. So I do not know whether or not here on the narrative we want to use it as a measure for anything.
You don't want to promote the ignorance and the corruption and the incompetence that's taking place in the NDC. That's what you don't want to. Because what context you're talking about? The three clips came from three different situations, different talk show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, different, right? They were just put together to show the incompetence of the minister of MIT and his ministry and the corruption that's taking place with the housing projects. That's what it's showing. But that's okay. You want context? There is context. When questioned about the project Build Back Better, or even just speaking on it on his own, Minister Andy Williams repeats the same narrative, no pun intended, repeats the same narrative like a broken record stuck in his head. Here is Minister Andy Williams.
I went, for example, in the Limes, got guys to come. We had a meeting on the Limes basketball court, and got guys off the block to come and start to paint, plumbing, electrical, even in Granance Valley. Yeah, we have guys like John Del Fletcher, who came in as a young person and just learning some of the stuff in construction. Now he's building houses, he's doing roads.
That was on beyond the headlines, and that was in context. That was on beyond the headlines. Now I'm going to show you a clip of the infamous press conference. And might I ask here, what happened to the rest of the press conferences? It was supposed to be a weekly press conference, right? Now, what is constructive here is that the question here, when he spoke there in that press conference that you're going to see now, the clip, it was in answer to or in relations to question from Ms. Calestra Faria, our number one credited journalist at that press conference. She asked a question to Minister Tevin Andrew in Carriacou about the Build Back Better project. And after Tevin gave his piece, Minister Andy Williams said he wanted to add something to it. So he was speaking to her, but you don't know the context. Here is that clip.
I've had to go physically to places like in the Limes, Granance Valley, and pull guys off the block to give them employment, to paint, etc.
Okay, now here is another part of this press conference when journalist Linda Straker asked again about the Build Back Better houses.
Minister Williams, I heard you on GBN the other night, and today I'm hearing you say it again that you went into, you went out and get people to do construction because it appeared there was a shortage of persons. Can you tell me the people that you would have picked up in the Limes on the block, or wherever you picked them up, were they one qualified to do construction as you pushed? Were they, other than being laborers, because there's a difference between being a laborer at a construction site as to someone who is in charge of management of the project and doing the purchasing and the ordering? Were these people who you offered contracts and engaged in, for the construction and erection of homes, qualified to do so? I say that against the background that on Sunday, Minister Gloria, she said on the NDC heartbeat that yes, she admitted there was a shortage of personnel in the construction and some of the houses was built below par. Can you balance off what you're coming to what she had to say and what you are saying, sir? Were the people who hired qualified and capable to engage in construction, understanding from the building code to how to measure sand and cement?
So let me just, I will go into it a little bit deeper for you to really understand, right? Senator Thomas is responsible for the Ministry of Social Development, which have a housing program under it. MIT has a special housing program also where we try to assist, because when after Hurricane Beryl, we understand that the Ministry of Social Development alone could not build back fast enough for our people. So what we did from MIT standpoint, we assisted. And MIT took on the role to do the build back. And we also did some special projects also. Now, the gentleman that I'm speaking about from the Limes, was gentleman that I got to do painting, yeah? I will not call the names, so I don't think that's fair. But I'm talking about gentlemen that did painting. You also had gentlemen from the neighborhood that's involved in plumbing also, that did not know about the government projects, and I got them involved in it. So the construction part of it, I will say no, but the painting part of it, yes. We were able to get electricians, plumbers, and painters from in the neighborhood, right? And I personally went. We had a meeting sometime back on the Limes basketball court. If you go back on my Facebook page, you will see it, where we gather all of them together, and we ask all of them to come together, tell me your skills and so. But let me just add to that, because you asked a very important question. There's a guy called John Del Fletcher, and I can call his name. This gentleman started about 2 years ago, a young gentleman, and he started to do the little construction and so. And I personally assisted him in getting a ransom, getting tools, and I'm so proud to see this gentleman know the work that he's doing. And these are young people that are in our community that we neglect. And as government, we tend not to provide opportunities for them. But here we are as an administration, finding opportunities for our young people. And this gentleman now is employing people from the Limes, especially. We have gentlemen like Troy Charles. Troy is a big, is someone who will mobilize sporting activities and so in the Limes area. And Troy Advantage is a good mobilizer. And he was able to mobilize fellas from the valley and so to do painting. If you look at,
I have to laugh because these guys really, really take us in Grenada here for fools. All of a sudden, it was not constructing or contracting or masonry or whatever. It was just electrical, painting, and plumbing. But you see, when you line so much, you don't even remember what you just said a second ago, right? It's like he not calling names. It's not fair to call the names. But John Del Fletcher and Troy Charles, right? He not calling names. It's not fair to call names, right? Now, he said 2 years ago, but in all his programs, wherever he went, he said because they couldn't find labor for the Build Back Better projects, he went to the Limes and in Grand Valley on the blocks. He went and picked up guys. That's a year ago. That's not 2 years ago. This is somebody with an accounting degree. Seems to can't count. The only thing he could count for is to embezzle. You know, to do that well. So, it's all muddled up there because he trying to get out of it, but he put himself in deeper because the questions are coming now. How is it that after a few months, you didn't know nothing about construction, he pick you up off the block, bring you to help, and all of a sudden you're a contractor building roads and houses? Is that why we have all these issues with our roads everywhere throughout the entire island? Roads falling down, roads slumping, big humps. After you fix it, I understand a young lady lost her baby on the lane. There's this piece of road that been giving them trouble since. And it's a hole with a hump right after it because it's moving. I don't know what's going on all of a sudden, right? Mediocrity. And so how the whole thing happened, the young lady lost her baby, right? So there is context. There is a context, Ms. Faria. He is explaining, he went in depth to explain. And why is it if the Ministry of Social Development needed help, the same minister is the Minister of Housing, Antiglo? So why couldn't the Ministry of Housing or the Housing Authority help out with the Build Back Better houses? Right? Is it had to be MIT? Follow the money. Follow the money. And yeah, all kind of money passing through the grants, all the climate change, climate resilient grants and stuff. We're gonna come to that next time. Passing through MIT. But he did say when he was in New York that climate change, for some reason he picked it out and he said there's a lot of money to be had from climate change. Now I know how we know that. Now I know how he knows that. Right? Now, let's put the other clips. That's the one to deal with picking up people off the blocks. We put that one in context already, right? Now let's deal with the other two clips that she spoke about that they chop up and put together. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like one whole thing from the same thing and it was edited, like what was done to me on the narrative. Edited and started to censor me. And that's why I left. Yes, that's why I left. Now, to put the other clips into context, Tanti Glow was a guest on the Heartbeat program, right? The NDC Heartbeat program. She was being interviewed by our ambassador to the diaspora, who is hosting an NDC program, party program, and collecting monies. His salary is from the government and people of Grenada. But that's okay. It's NDC. They can do what they want. They're doing things differently, right? Nothing. Now, on that program, she was asked about the housing program. And this is what she had to say, sadly. And you can see aching, her heart aching as she said it.
That came out clearly after the burial response.
Yeah.
We were looking for contractors to do small houses, and we were not getting contractors.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we hire people, they say they could build, and when you see what they build, it's a disaster, next disaster. So we really need to get our people, especially our young men, upgraded with skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Because some of them, they've been around construction as a helper, but they have not acquired the skill to go on their own.
Right.
And that is a challenge.
It's not to acquire the skill, Tanti. It's to get qualified. Because a lot of people out there with skills, A lot of young ladies who do cosmetology or hairdressing, they work with a hairdresser for a few months. Even sometimes the hairdresser they work with are not qualified, but they're skilled. And they work with them and then they go on their own. The same thing happens with mechanics and plumbers and carpenters. But it's to get qualified so that you know what you're doing, because sometimes you can work by ear because you don't know. You have not done the theoretical part. So you don't know the real stuff. So you're working by ear, And what happens when it's not what you think it is? And in the case of cosmetology, when you're not supposed to mix certain products, right? You don't know that because you didn't do the theoretical part. So it's not about the skill. It's about getting qualified and not just picking up somebody off the block and today they're building house and building roads. Like Mr. Latouche, as the examples used from creative house, creative design. Yeah, could you imagine that? The reference made was from to Dr. Latouche. Mhm. So the third clip, Madam Accredited Journalist and a president of the Media Workers Association of Grenada, MWAG. The Minister of Finance was on GBN to the point, their morning talk show program, and again in answer to questions on the Build Back Better Housing Project, also in dismay, spoke of what he knows to be happening with the project, basically outlining corruption. He even stuttered and saying that he didn't even want to talk about that on air. And maybe there were other things that he didn't tell us. But here is what he had to say.
Constituency, St. Patrick's East. How is things in the constituency, sir?
Well, a lot is happening in St. Patrick East, and in recent time I've done some interviews on how many houses that we have actually put out in the last year since burial. Yeah. And I must say that things have gone apace. A number of persons would have gotten a new house. In some cases, the house repairs and so on. There are one or two houses that were started and they are yet to be completed. Some of them have issues, I would tell you, because I've heard one or two cases yesterday when I was in the field that the contractor started the house and he disappeared.
Why is that happening, sir?
I don't really know, but I mean, I believe that the persons who issuing the contracts to those contractors need to basically make sure that they vet these people properly and so on. I've heard stories on the road, which I mean, I don't even want to talk about it here right now, where a guy got money and so on, he put it in an account and so on, and every now and again he goes and takes $200 from it and so on. And it doesn't appear on the person's side to be able to continue the project. So yes, we have one or two houses.
So we have a management problem then to that.
Yes, there might be that case this one. But I wanted put out a warning out to the persons who have collected government monies and did not do what they should do with it and so on, or use it for other purposes and so on. We would have the audit department audit those things, and would have the necessary step taken to make sure that you can account or you account for the monies that you were given. I know there are problems where, for example, somebody might tell you, well, this is the land and so on, and when I say we, the ministry took it as though that's a gospel, and they went and started building that house, and then realized that there was somebody coming and challenge, you're building on my land. Again, we have to be more structured, put things in place to make sure that we can verify ownership of property before we get into building those things. So yes, there might be some learning situation in the past that we have to take into consideration, where people build on people's land that was not authorized. And so we, going forward, have to make sure that all of these things are corrected. It may not be just a matter of mismanagement. It may be a matter of people not being upfront with the information they gave them.
Now, if you were following, Madam Journalist, accredited journalist, the news, be it social media, print, or radio, television, you would have known that it was in context. But you knew it was in context, didn't you? Didn't you know it was in context? I'm on social media, and I follow, right? But it wasn't about the context, was it? We know that. We know that. Because the context was there for you to see in plain sight. It was all about the Build Back Better project, right? But we all know that that was a bunch of Hogwash. Hogwash. Now, Minister Cornwall said, the persons issuing contracts must make sure that they vet the contractors, I guess, the persons getting the jobs before issuing the contracts. I mean, that is normal and natural. That is for anything you're doing, really, right? Because you don't take the gardener. If you shop to the doctor's office and you see the gardener sitting behind the desk there, you would think twice. You're like, right? And I don't think you let your gardener examine you, right? So we know that you should vet, you should make sure the persons are qualified. And who are these persons issuing the contract? Who are these? What is persons issuing the contract, Minister Cornwall? Right? Minister Andy said MIT is doing the Build Back Better project. So definitely it comes from MIT. Not sure who inside MIT, a bunch of crooks anyway, is doing that, is issuing the contracts. I know of some contractors who been picking up cash monies from there, from MIT. Now, didn't the minister of MIT realize that persons was spending the monies given to them and not doing the job? As Minister Cornwall said, some of them disappear. How come we never had nothing about that from the Ministry of MIT? Didn't they know that? And now I understand you guys have them poor contractors now trying to find receipts for the nail and the screw they put in there months ago because you're all exposed, right? We're sticking at it. More to come. More to come. Folks, more corruption. You think it done? Every corner. Corruption is widespread throughout this government, the institutions, the entities, and ministries. And in some cases, systematic. Yeah. In some instances, very systematic. It's like a communicable disease catching. Corruption in plain sight. All man, Jack, and their brother. And lately, it seems like it's rough. Because, folks, the writing is on the wall. Time is drawing near. Folks are beginning to realize it's almost over. So let's load up. And it's grab. Everybody grabbing and pushed down in their bag. Yeah. Some could barely lift the bag when it done grab. The latest casualty to reach my pen is Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Properties Office, IPO. That entity deals with general registration and incorporation of businesses. Yes, it got to me. I got it. And I know there are some persons within that administration that are going to be like, I can't say the word on air. You mean she can talk to us? Yes. So KIPO, that entity that I said deals with general registration and incorporation of businesses in the legal process of forming a business entity, typically a corporation that exists as a separate legal entity from its owners or shareholders. This means the company can own assets, enter contracts to be held liable for its own actions, separate from the personal assets of its owners, right? Kaipo also do intellectual property rights as well. Now, a company named Extra Miles Services popped up. Registered by Kaipo, registered as a sole proprietorship under the name Kindra Thomas, wife of Fimba Thomas, a worker at Kaipo. The gentleman NDC was supporting to become president of the Public Workers Union. Public worker in that department. Now, Extra Mile Services is offering all the services one can get from the Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Properties Office, KIPO. All the services that KIPO provides through their staff. In some instances, you have to pay $10. You know how the government institution charge $10. I mean, you know how 100, maybe 100 plus at times, I'm not sure. But I know it's minimal. Many years ago when I registered my company, I didn't even have to pay. It wasn't, and then as time went on, they have costs to it, but minimal. And to get information of how you go about forming a business, because sometimes you have foreigners and they don't know, and they come here and or persons who live abroad and came back home. The generally, basically, most people don't know how to go about doing that. So they get the information you get from in there, right inside there. Now, services that the government of Grenada charges $10 for. It is alleged that Extra Mile Services charges something like $700 for that. And other services, all up to $4,000. A young lady, practically in tears, didn't know better and was charged that type of money, thinking though she was paying the government of Grenada. Only when she got the invoice, it was extra mile services. And let's just say the signature on there wasn't the wife's signature. It wasn't the wife's signature, but we knew that, right? I'd be surprised if the wife know her name is on a business certificate in Kaipo. A young entrepreneur, nonetheless, was taken advantage of. It is alleged that Extra Mile Services have been registering companies, African companies, some linked to members of the government of Grenada, others bogus. Simon says he's calling on the registrar at Kaipo, Mr. Robert Branch, to come forward to investigate, first of all, these allegations and come forward and let the nation know and to get rid of the individuals or individual that is performing these acts inside Kaipo. I give you a week, Mr. Branch, to hear something from you. Take care of these corrupt practices taking place at Kaipo. I await your findings, Mr. Branch. I'll be right back if nothing happened in a week's time. I have news before we get to the meat of the matter today. I have news. But first, let us listen to the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, in an interview, a snippet with Dr. Kellen Bubb on the Bubb Report on Sunday, the 29th June, 2025.
Sunday, June 29th on the Bubb Report. Why was that Jeeper contract cancelled?
When we got into office, there was no active work taking place.
You may or may have heard of allegations of bribery against your Minister of MIT.
Bribery is a criminal act, and that's true. But someone is making an allegation. I'm sure the IGP at the step, I'm sure the FLE is dead, I'm sure the integrity function is dead.
You're correct, Prime Minister. Bribery is a crime. And that's why we've been pressing for you as a leader to take some form of action, whether is to get your own independent commission of inquiry to investigate it. That's why we've been pressing, because your allegations are made, if you want to call it that, because you may say you don't know that for a fact. I do know it for a fact. But let me say here, allegations are made, serious allegations, you just said it, it's a crime, against one of your cabinet members, your best member, so to speak, according to your supporters. They even put him before you. I've seen in comments, Andy for Prime Minister. Perception is reality. You leave him in your seat for so long that people now believe he can do the job. I mean, you're not doing it. It's not like you're going to make much of a difference. So, bribery is a crime. And therefore, you as leader of the executive, you should take it more seriously and stop enabling the minister. You've been doing it from the very beginning, even before he became minister. You've been paying bills, you've been paying off people coming to you, the bounce check, everything, right? It continued all throughout the 3 years. Imagine the minister's name up in government financial offices where they collect cash, as for somebody not to receive check from. Early, they take it down. Stop sweeping it under the rug. Sweep it outside. Sweep it outside. However, I have taken your advice, sir, and written to the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, and the Royal Grenada Police Force, the RGPF. It's the same letter. The content is the same, just where FIU is, I changed it to the RGPF. So I'm going to read to you one copy of the letter. Let me get my glasses here. July 7th, 2025. Mr. Brendan Latouche, head of the Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU, Caronard St. George's. Well, they have since moved. I found that out when I went looking for them. They are in the Galleria Mall in Grand Anse, St. George. And it reads, Dear Mr. Latouche, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to formally request an investigation into the actions of Minister and Member of Parliament Andy Williams in accordance with Section 6 of the Financial Intelligence Unit mandate. There are serious allegations that Minister Andy Williams has accepted a bribe totaling 115,000 US dollars from Gain Limited in exchange for the Cliff Road project contract. Moreover, Minister Williams has received several loans from the Grenada Development Bank, which goes against the act of the bank. an EC $300,000 loan from the COVID Economic Support Medium, Small, and Micro Enterprise Program. That part of the program was for small hoteliers, unless Mr. William have a small hotel. However, because he's a legislator, he cannot receive a loan from the development bank. He would have to demit office to get that loan. So the loan from MSME and other loans from the Grenada Development Bank, the GDB, amounting to over 4 million EC dollars. This contravenes the Grenada Development Bank Act. Additionally, Minister Andy Williams is reported to have issued several bounce checks, which raises significant concerns regarding financial misconduct. These actions appear to contravene Section 97 and 83 of the Criminal Code and the Proceeds of Crime Act, respectively. The above collectively provokes actions consistent with Section 33(2), subsection C of the Grenada Constitution Order 1973. Also, Sections 3 of this section, Section 31, subsection 1 to 4. Given the severity of these allegations, it is imperative that the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, conducts a thorough investigation to ensure adherence to our financial and legal frameworks and to maintain public confidence in our government's institutions. As a podcaster, I receive information from members of the public and various other sources. I rely on the credibility of that information to bring news to my podcast. Although I am confident of the factual nature of the news, as an ordinary citizen, I lack the required and investigative power to fully examine the details of these occurrences. It is against this backdrop that I appeal to your organization to utilize your legal status, your power and authority to further investigate these matters in the interest of the public. Take this public call for you to do the following full investigations. 1, the circumstances surrounding the granting of all loans from the GDB to Mr. Andy Williams. 2, the circumstances surrounding the sale of Andy Williams's property in Mount Parnassus, St. George's, to Gain Limited. 3, identify the beneficial owner of Gain Limited. I take 3 again. Identify the beneficial owner of Gain Limited. 4, the circumstances surrounding the repairs of Minister Andy Williams' vehicle, a white Isuzu pickup truck, T4254. 5, all circumstances surrounding and granting of the road contracts for the Cliff Road and True Blue Road projects to CCCCI. 6, all circumstances surrounding the car mix operating on the Cliff and the True Blue Road projects with regards to insurance and legality of being on the road license. In reference to the death of a young man on the True Blue Road project and the bolting into someone's private home on the Cliff Road project. If you require any further information, clarification regarding any of these matters, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I give my number, or by email, and I give my email address. Thank you for your attention to these urgent issues. Sincerely, Jennifer Simon Rapier, a concerned citizen. Now, as I said, this exact letter is written to the RGPF, the Commissioner of Police. Just, of course, the name changed from FIU to the RGPF. As I spoke of the Integrity Commission, that is work in progress. That is work in progress. No, we're not giving up. We're not giving up. Every week, I would speak to the public, and to you, Prime Minister, directly, or indirectly, should I say, on the bribery, on the corruption in NLA, and wherever else the corruption is. And we will not let the people forget. We would not let them forget. If it's okay for you to have in your cabinet, in your parliament, well, not your parliament, it's our parliament, to have in your cabinet, and as your best man, your designated acting prime minister, a criminal. You said it. Bribery is a crime. Writing bounce check is a crime. Embezzlement is a crime. Corruption is a crime. And if it's okay for you, then that's fine. You, him, and everybody else going through the door. Straight through the door. For months, I have been calling on the Prime Minister to investigate the bribery that took place between Minister Andy Williams, Minister for MIT, and the contractor of the Cliff Road project, Mr. Nelson Louison, of the CCCCI company. Now, after the advisor to the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Rodney George, said the contract was fairly won, above board, right? Everything above board. The Prime Minister have decided to part ways with contractor Nelson Louison and his CCCI company. In a town hall in St. Patrick last week, a few days ago, the Prime Minister had this to say.
To provide an update on the Woburn Cliff project, I will openly admit that my frustration and annoyance with this project is probably spilling over publicly because the project is now almost 5 to 6 months delayed. The team at the Ministry of Infrastructure, together with the consultant Safed, who's supervising the project, have taken the decision, and we intend to subcontract some of the work to accelerate the process of getting this road completed, and we will enter into discussions with the contractor for us to amicably part ways. Instructions have been given to the Permanent Secretary to seek to do so, but one way or the other, the rate of construction on this road must be accelerated because the due completion date is September, and if you pass the road, you will see the due completion date was this September coming, but if you pass, you will see, based on the progress of the works, that we are looking like September next year. And that is not something I'm prepared to countenance. So we will do everything we can from our end to accelerate the construction, because the road was completely blocked off to specifically design accelerating the construction of the road, so you didn't have to deal with traffic management, and it's now over here that motorists have been inconvenienced.
So the thing mash up, Andy. The thing mash up. I hope the man gets back his money's worth thus far. You might have to pay back the $115,000. Watch out. The thing match up, the prime minister can take it no more. The above board contractor, everything was above board. He fairly deserved the contract, blah, blah, blah. We all knew, at least I knew, all of that was fanfare. All of that was icing on top cardboard box. Pretty cake. Nicely icing cardboard box below. Just to cover up. Pull out the big guns. Advisor to the minister in the Ministry of Infrastructure, Mr. Rodney George. I prepared the contract. Huh? And former permanent secretary, William Joseph, and the CTO, poor child, poor kid. The CTO in the Ministry of Infrastructure. All an act. Prime Minister can't take it no more. Because you all know, and I'm speaking out to the people involved in the Ministry of Infrastructure, that the Prime Minister was dragging foot on giving Mr. Louison and the CCCCI company that project. And you know that the project was given to that company while the Prime Minister was away and while Mr. Andy Williams was in as Prime Minister and Minister for Infrastructure. So when he say, let me look you in your eyes and tell you, I am the Minister of MIT, we know that. No, you're the Minister of MIT, you'd have to tell me that. Right? But MIT building roads too, what you talking about? The money MIT got in the supplemental budget, I think it was 15 million for building roads. That's the Ministry of Infrastructure. Roads and houses, I think, to start. Anyhow, the total on that was $24.5 million. Building roads and houses in the supplementary budget went to MIT. You know, MIT is the sub Ministry of Infrastructure. Prime Minister ain't doing nothing in infrastructure. Who's going to get the blame? Minister Andy Williams was given $100,000 in hand, and his pickup truck T4254 renovated at a cost of $15,000, plus the $600,000 for the sale of his house. Same company. Oh, the house in Montparnasse, St. George, that was supposed to be security at the Grenada Development Bank amongst his parents' house in the Limes and 2 small pieces of land in St. David's, which was all given back to him. He was asked to pay $300,000. I've never seen that agreement or heard of it before. But the NDC Board of Directors gave him back his security. So now he has millions of dollars unsecured in the development bank. In the development bank. Now that board needs to be investigated as well. Bribe was in exchange for the contract of the Cliff Road project. Prime Minister, why are you turning a blind eye on that information? But as I spoke of GDB, let me share with you what Mr. Jonathan Lacrette had to say on receiving a loan from GDB. Now remember, Mr. Lacrette's name was called around a few months after Minister Andy's, saying that he also received a loan from the GDB for a mortgage. Now, sometime just before he got fired, actually, he came out and said that he never received monies or a loan from the GDB. I remember coming on and saying, that Mr. Lacret should be more transparent and say that he did not draw down on the loan instead of saying he did not receive a loan. Because he did apply, he did accept, he did receive the loan. The application, should I say, was accepted, and the monies were there to be drawn down. He just didn't draw down on it. But let's hear Mr. Lacret.
Has to do with allegations that you received a loan from the Grenada Development Bank. Of course, those allegations were also targeted against one of your former colleagues,
Yes.
Mr. Andy Williams,
Yes.
who in a sit-down with me, he indicated that that particular loan was approved before his entry into politics.
Yes.
So what is the reality there with respect to
Yes.
GDP and Mr. Lacret?
Well, as it relates to GDB, upon coming into office in June of 2022, my wife and I, the family was growing.
Yes.
And my wife and I, we did approach the Grenada Development Bank for a mortgage to build a house. Truthfully, while we were in the process of waiting for the loan to be approved or not approved, a former member of the board of directors met me, and we were just having a simple discussion, about politics and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, it came to him asking me, well, I see you went into GDB, you're looking for something, etc. Maybe I can guide you as a former board member, etc. And I said to him what my wife and I were doing. And he said to me, I think that you would want to read the bylaws of GDB, or the act that governs the financial organization, before you actually proceed with that. So I went, I did my research, and I recognized that members of the executive should not be engaged in acquiring loans from the Grenada Development Bank. And as a result of that, I went to the officer that we were dealing with, and granted, the move for us was very expedient, simply because we had outgrown the space that we were in as it relates to the apartment we were living in, the children. And as a result of that, I said to my wife, you know what, I don't want this to have any kind of repercussions futuristically in the politics. We eliminate the wait period, and we also eliminate any kind of unforeseen circumstances futuristically in the political environment, as a member of the executive, acquiring a loan from the development bank. So that's that. The loan was approved, truthfully, but we never drew down on it.
You never drew down on
We
the
never
loan.
drew down on it.
Okay.
We left it like that.
Right.
Yeah? And we
Okay.
went to another financial institution.
You heard him. He got the loan approved. But someone, a former member of a board of directors of the GDP, met him and said to him, you're not supposed to, as an executive member, a legislature, you are not supposed to get a loan from the GDP. It's against the act, it's against the law. So he pulled back. He never drew down on the loan. That's what he said. The wind went with the mics there, and you might not have heard the part where he said someone met him who used to be a board member and told him that he, I think the gentleman worked in the bank as well, in the GDB, but was no longer a member of the board because, of course, NDC in office, and only NDCites supposed to be on the board. Or they have to know that you're an NDCite. You might be an NDCite that they don't know. So you remember the Prime Minister say, if they don't know, you ain't gonna get nothing. Yeah, they had to know. So you have to show yourself. Come up in the front of the class and show yourself to get. So, so he did not draw down. Everything was in place, and he did not draw down because it was against the act. And so he did not want to go against the act. Right. Okay. Being a gentleman, being a Christian, obeying the laws of the act and the laws of the land, he did not draw down. That's how it's supposed to be. But he's the one that get fired. He's the one that get fired. Now, moving on. The Prime Minister, in his campaign, during the campaign in 2022, spoke of the Grenada Development Bank and clearly described what the GDB should be about. Let's hear it.
One obvious way of doing that is addressing our lending institutions, like the Grenada Development Bank, which we say on an NDC will be focused on the productive sectors. GDB should be the ones giving loans to fishermen. GDB should be the ones giving loans to our farmers. GDB should be the ones giving loans to our agro processors. GDB should not be involved in giving loans to buy vehicles or frankly to even buy homes. That is for commercial and retail banking. You are a development bank. Your job is to back and support our businessmen and women who are the ones that will provide the employment to our fellow Grenadians so that they can go and get a loan from a commercial or retail bank.
Much less, or even buy homes, vehicle, homes, much less to pay off bad debts, much less. But it's fine, right? GDB checks paying financial institution in town. GDB checks paying companies. Much less to pay off the debts of Mr. Andy Williams. But you realize when he was going on the rampage, he had to stop and think for a minute. Should I say house? Because he had to think. But it was then, Andy it wasn't to buy house, right? So he had to think about what he was going to say before he said it. But you might have heard, some of you might have heard fishermen calling in on programs and say that they applied to GDB for loans to do their boats, redo their boats and get new engines. And GDB tell them they don't have the money. And one fisherman said he did tell him he could only get money for the engine and not for some other thing, or for the body of the boat, but not for the engine. Some story. All the money gone, way gone. Millions to Andy Williams. Millions to Andy Williams. He did, in fact, had loans with them before he came into the politics, the frontline politics, which, if he was vetted, should not have been a candidate. Which, if he was vetted for the bounce checks he had throughout Grenada and in Trinidad, should not have been a candidate. He should not have been able to contend. But he did. And whilst in there, let me tell you, on the 17th of June, a few days before the elections, Mr. Williams was turned down. He had a loan he had applied for through the same development bank and got turned down. Other commercial banks as well had turned him down. So when you hear to say, oh, the application was in and he got through after, that's a poor excuse, because even if you get through, like Mr. Lacret did, when he realized what the section in the act said, he turned it down, right? But there ain't nothing about he got turned down before the elections. So any other application would have been a new application to his NDC board of directors, headed by Miss Andrea St. Bernard, the chairman of the board. Now, in a previous interview with Dr. Kellen Bubb, when asked about the allegations of a member of his cabinet allegedly accepting loans from the GDB, and those were the words coming from Mr. Bubb, this is what the Prime Minister had to say.
The leader of the opposition and other elements of civil society have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank, to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers. Is that an accusation that has come your way? Or is that something that you have heard or have had discussion on?
Well, I'll be very straight on this, right? As far as I'm aware, Minister Williams has been a customer of the Grenada Development Bank pre his involvement in public life. That's factual, that's clear. And his relationship with the bank has continued. The bank and my government are not using the bank to finance the personal loans of any ministers. And I've said this specifically in the case of Minister Williams, because I know, and I think the public knows, and bank officials will know, that Minister Williams was in fact doing business with the bank long before he got into public life, and he would have continued his business arrangements with the bank, would have continued post that. And that's the only issue I am aware of in terms of the bank having an actual relationship with the bank. But I want to make the point here. The Grenada Development Bank does business with the citizens of Grenada. A politician or a public official is also a citizen of Grenada. And if that politician or citizen or public official meets the bank's criteria for financial services from the bank, that citizen, that public official, that politician, in my view, is entitled to have access to the bank services like any other citizen of Grenada. And
but he did not meet the criteria. That's why he got turned down before. He had loans there that was not being serviced. Millions already. And he added to it. And that is against the act. Because he had it before he became a politician. He became a politician. And you, Prime Minister, should know that it goes against the act of the bank for him to get further loans. And the first loan he got, which was only about 6 months after entering office, was $300,000 under the MSME program for small hoteliers. Does Mr. William have a small hotel? And when small hoteliers went to the bank, they were told the money done. You know that for a fact. Mr. Andy Well get $300,000 up front. That is besides the monies he got added to what he already had in there. That was used to pay off persons he was owing millions. And there are those out there that he still owe. Big companies whose name I cannot call because they themselves are speaking out in the public because they're embarrassed. They support you all. And they're embarrassed. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And other little companies that's struggling. 18,000 there and 20,000 there. Still owing. What are you talking about? And Mr. Williams is not an ordinary citizen of Grenada. No. You yourself said the money's in the bank. It's for fisher folks, farmers, agro-processors. In the GDP, you yourself said it. Not for buying vehicles and mortgages. But to pay off debt. That's throwing money in a hole. If you have a mortgage, you're paying back the bank for the mortgage. If you pay off millions for paying debt, where you getting the money to pay back the bank? He don't have a business anymore. The business went bankrupt. What is he paying back the bank with? No, you give him back his securities. He is not an ordinary citizen. And to cover up, and you make yourself look like moving along. I have some young ones that is be looking at Simon Says. I have to be respectful. The Mr. Williams, being a member of the legislature of the state of Grenada, legislature, parliament, in parliament, or in any company controlled by any such director or member of the legislature. This is the act here. Or to the close relatives, not even members of the relatives of you guys, members of the cabinet, the executive, the legislature, what you want to call y'all, whatever. Not even close relatives of you supposed to access loans from the Grenada Development Bank. Just to note here, also, Minister Lennox Andrew also accepted a loan from the GDB to send his daughter to study abroad. Folks, Section 33(1), subsection C of the Grenada Constitution, Order 1973 reads, a member of the House of Representatives shall vacate his seat in the House, subject to this provisions of subsection 3 of this section, if any other circumstances arises, that if he were not such a member, should cause him to be disqualified, to be elected as such by virtue of subsection 1 of section 31 of this Constitution, of any law enacted in pursuance of subsection 2, 3, or 4 of that section. Pull up the Constitution. Go back and get the sections that I just read out and look at it for yourselves. In essence, what the Constitution is saying, that if the circumstances outlined in the subsections exist, that the representatives shall, and what shall means in law? Shall vacate his seat. A member of the House of Representatives cannot benefit from the government finances or contract, or they shall be disqualified from the House. Well, wait now. What we have there? A lawless government? A lawless administration? The Prime Minister correctly said that Minister Andy Williams had a previous loan with the GDB before entering office. What he did not say is that as a result of that, Andy Williams should not have been nominated to be a candidate for the South or any other constituency. What he did not say also is that Andy Williams was not servicing his loans and that on entering the cabinet of Grenada, a second consolidation was done. You hear me? Well, no, I think that was the 5th or the 6th, as a matter of fact. Deed of charge, yeah. Which goes against the Bank Act and the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Prime Minister, do you know that the last loan request from Mr. Andy Williams to the GDB was not approved by the board of directors of the GDB at the time? The meeting held on the 17th of June 2022, just 6 days before the general election, June 23rd, 2022. With all of that, on entering office, he was still able to get a loan from the bank under the MSME program. And I have it here. The December 28th, 2022. Mr. Andy Williams, Managing Director of A&D Distributors Limited, Woodlands, St. George's. Dear Mr. Williams, we are pleased to advise that the loan of $300,000 has been approved for A&E Distributions Limited as part of the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise MSME Support Fund, a program of the Government of Grenada and the Grenada Development Bank, and it's subject to the availability of funds at the time of drawdown. The following principal terms and conditions apply. Now, 300,000 was the maximum given, and he got his 300,000. All fees and charges due to the bank in respect of the loan must be paid in cash. Then they can check. Hey, then they can check from him, you know. All wait. All fees and charges due to the bank in respect of the loan must be paid in cash or by a banker's draft. They ain't taking no chances upon signing the loan agreement. Because this man does write bounce check to cover bounce check, you know. This man, this minister, Andy Williams. No drawdown will be permitted until all security conditions has been satisfied. Amount approved, loan amount, 300,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars, right? And here is when they explain to him about his interest and everything, the Grenada Development Bank. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the 20th of December 2022, the loan repayment and security. The security is always the same security, and they give it back to him. They gave it back to him. Now, you tell me, and this man is who? Does be driving in P1 and P2. Every time the Prime Minister goes up in the clubs, which is very often, except for these days since Nolene came on the scene. Grounded. But that ain't gonna help. That ain't gonna help. You could stay down as much as you want. You could walk the road with big caucus bag, carrying food, groceries, and talking about people don't go out in the rain and the sun. Yes, take the rain and the sun. Now, why didn't take it in 2022? Imagine now you're meeting and greeting constituents. 3 years later, no, it was free fall. Handed on a platter. Do the work. Do the work. Right? So after he get the money from the MSME, 3 months later is when he got the millions to pay off his debt. He had also owed financial institution in Tong, MyFi, 300,000 as well. 300,000 as well. Folks, I leave you with this final clip of Mr. Jonathan Lacrette as he was interviewed by Dr. Kellen Bubb, compliments the Bubb report.
Parted ways with my former colleagues, and as painful as it was at the particular point in time, maybe who knows, in the providence of God, it was necessary. Yes. I felt, though, Kellon, that if something was wrong, I spent 18 months in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Religious Affairs. I spent 7 months in the Ministry of Youth and Sports as the line minister with responsibility for policy development and policy implementation. And if there was a problem during the 18 months and the 7 months respectively, I felt maybe that there was a dialogue that could be had so that we can talk about whatever it is you think that I am not doing well ministerially. And as a result of that, help me to improve. But there was no such dialogue that took place within the 18 months and the 7 months respectively. And I thought that the firing was so strange because when cabinet was reshuffled in January of 2024, I was not given a ministerial portfolio. So in my mind, this thing started way before the National Lotteries Authority issue came up, Because in January of 2024, when cabinet was reshuffled, if my memory serves me correctly, I think it was maybe 6, 7, 8 ministers were reshuffled out of their ministries into other ministries. And my dialogue, my one-on-one dialogue, when Prime Minister called us in to speak with us individually, my dialogue with him was totally different because he did say to me that he's not offering a ministerial portfolio to me with the reshuffling of the cabinet, but we are offering you a diplomatic posting, and we are offering you ambassador to Canada. And I remember reclining in my chair and saying, Prime Minister, I'm not understanding where this dialogue is going at this particular point in time, because this is 18 months into governance, and you are asking me to take up my young family and to head thousands of miles away when you, of all the persons, understand also, when you also understand the degree of work that we have started in the constituency. I am not understanding the rationale for this diplomatic posting. No, the response that was given wasn't substantial enough to satisfy my curiosity as to why you would want me out of the cabinet of Grenada at that particular point in time. And I also said to him, this is 18 months sitting as the Minister for Health, Wellness and Religious Affairs. The years 2024 to 2027, the management team and I have designated those years as the years of health sector modernization with a solid plan to really transform various areas of the healthcare sector. And so with that going on, I wasn't understanding why the diplomatic posting at that particular point in time. I humbly and cordially refused, because I wasn't going to root my young family up and move thousands of miles away to Canada, even though you're representing your country in that diplomatic setting. I felt as though this is where I belong, which is Grenada. This is where my political work is, my spiritual work is, and that this was going to be a premature moving. And apart from that, I would have to seek the face of God, whether or not the posting sounded nice, or the offer sounded nice and sounded pretty. I would have to definitely seek God as to whether or not a move like that is of him, and whether or not he is going to get the glory out of a move like that out of Grenada because of the work that he has mandated me to do here on island.
So at that point of pushback, was that the point at which the Prime Minister then made a course correction and offered you the cabinet portfolio of Minister of Youth and Sport?
No, well, I said to him that I don't know if there are any other portfolios that are vacant after you have reshuffled, if there's anything that's vacant, or you can put me elsewhere, etc. And I said, I know that I was speaking with him about the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and I also spoke with him about the Ministry of Climate Resilience, renewable energy. And he said, you know what? The three offers are on the table. You have 24 hours. You can go home and you can think about them. And you can let me know within 24 hours so that I can inform the Governor General. You can let me know within 24 hours which one you think that you are going to be best suited in. So I went home and did what I would always do. I prayed about it. And I chose the Ministry of Youth and Sports. I chose the Ministry of Youth and Sports.
But it was, as you articulated, was not an initial.
No, it was not. No, the offer was ambassador to Canada.
But of course, one might argue that you serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister can determine if he wants you in the cabinet or not. Certainly, the Prime Minister can also determine whether or not he wants to send you to a diplomatic posting in Canada. So some might say here.
You've heard it? With all of that said there, to date, crickets. Concerning that, the Prime Minister boarded the ecstasy party boat to celebrate with his friends and supporters, celebrating their 3rd year in office. Same day, for a cruise dubbed the Prime Minister's Cruise. After his address to persons on board, he ended like this.
This is only local music we play from now till we go back in court. Who said jam must play? More jam, take jam.
More jab, more jab, more jab in you. He said before that jab must play. This is a guy a few weeks ago said they have to deal with the fact that the jab come out so early. After, mind you, after Carnival was launched. Carnival was launched on the 1st of May, and some jabs started to come out every Sunday. Well, more jab and more jabs started coming out. But these, you're trying to stop the more jab. Although Grenada is the land of 100,000 jabs. It was given that name. We were dubbed that name years ago. 15 years ago? 10 years ago? 15. Yeah. And yeah, 15. I'm just making sure because lessons was paid for me. I don't want to sound like I'm not learning, right? You guys, it'll hold me down, it'll hold me back, hold me back. Now, Job must play. Job must play to his supporters. For warriors and thing on board, eh? And anytime you take job in you. You heard it. You heard the obscenities coming in a row from these supporters, well-wishers, members alike on board, youth, young people. You heard them. He was get slapped 5 when he did it, man. Yes, kick, job in there. Noise, jump up celebration. He grinned. Prime Minister, the Prime Minister, leader of the NDC. Yeah, Prime Minister. This from someone who a couple weeks ago on his DM the PM, when questioned on our boys and in that interview, this is what he had to say.
Recently, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, went on record to say that moving forward, she is looking to press for students who either fight or disrupt the classes or what have you. They are moving away from just suspending or expelling, but in some cases looking to press charges, criminal charges against students who are either involved in violence in schools. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the situation in Trinidad is obviously dramatically different from Grenada. So I really don't feel I could comment fairly or even second guess the thoughts of the Honorable Prime Minister. I've lived in Trinidad. I studied in law school there for 2 years. So I think I fully understand the level of insecurity, the level of crime and violence that permeates Trinidad and Tobago and some of our brothers and sisters. And regionally, we've deemed crime a public health challenge at risk, and we actually believe violence is contagious, and because people tend to do what they see. I don't want Grenada to even have 1 billion of the kind of violence and crime that Trinidad has to cope with. So I think it's important for us to understand that violence begets violence. And we have to start fundamentally with re-educating ourselves at the earliest opportunity as to how we are able to navigate some of the things that leads to violence. And if we don't do that, then we run the risk of all of us having a slow march to Haiti. That's the reality. So there is the glorification of guns, there's the glorification of violence, there's the numbing and dumbing down of violent behavior, of crude behavior, crude language. We have to recognize that these are things that we have to push back against, and we have to talk about those things, because if we don't, And if we don't educate ourselves properly about it, then we will become a violent society, and it becomes even more difficult to address some of the concerns that we are raising in men. So there's no silver magic bullet, but there are countries which used to be very violent and have been able to turn the clock. Sometimes it may take tough action, as in the kind of things the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad has talked about. But in addition to tough action, you also need education. The two, in my view, will go hand in hand, because you want to discourage criminality, but at the same time, you also want to encourage young men in particular to find positive reasons for living and to engage in wholesome and upright and supportive behavior. So it's a complex issue, but I think for us in Grenada, we are still fortunate, and we should ensure that we start as early as possible to make sure that our boys in particular are educated the right way, have the right value system, see themselves the right way, and particularly see women and children and their peers in a positive light, so that we don't have to resolve things.
More job, more job, more job in you. Did he say crude language among boys? And you go on a boat with mostly women and young girls and young people and tell them at a chorus, have them chorus you, more job, more job. This guy, as I said before on here many times, is a narcissist.
Narcissists don't really love people. They control, exploit, and use them. A narcissist version of love isn't real love. It doesn't come with connection, care, or respect. Instead, it's focused around control. Narcissists see people as tools for their own benefit. They exploit emotions, manipulate situations, and use others to inflate their own sense of importance. When they say, "I love you," it usually means, "I love what you do for me," or "I love how you make me feel." Their focus isn't on giving love, but on taking from the people around them. And the worst part is that they'll often make you feel like you are the problem, all while continuing to drain you emotionally, mentally, and even physically. If you're dealing with a narcissist, their behavior isn't your fault. You deserve real love, the kind that uplifts, supports, and respects you, not one that uses you and discards you. So protect your peace, set boundaries, and never feel guilty for walking away from someone who only takes. Remember that.
I say no more. I say no more. Then in Parliament in the lower house, on the 17th of June, the member for St. John thought she should give us a lesson on jab.
Jab is not just revelry. It is a living, embodied response to slavery. It is an art form birthed out of trauma and resilience. But when people take to the streets in June and July, months before Carnival, Mr. Speaker, we have to ask ourselves, and we must ask ourselves, have we taught them what jab really means? And so the answer, Mr. Speaker, tragically is no. So this is what the cost of cultural illiteracy is.
But the Prime Minister said jab must play. And he said more jab. I'm sure he was on that boat answering to the Prime Minister. More jab, more jab. You know, whatever she taken, I think he taking it too. They had to be on something, and something strong. This is the same uninformed member for St. John who told us that Grenada took their own time to join the CRIF. Let's hear what she said in the Parliament.
My substantive intervention in this honourable House is the issue of the CRIF facility. If my memory serves me right, Mr. Speaker, this facility was launched in 2015, and it was as a result of quite a number of different natural disasters that occurred in the region and elsewhere. It took our country 8 years Mind you, we were faced with Hurricane Ivan, a Category 3, 2004. We were also faced with a Category 1, I believe, Hurricane Emily, 2005. And it took the government then, not this numbers, not our beloved Prime Minister now, not the former one before who represented the same institution that we come from, but it took that opposition 8 years to join the facility. So when they glut and they try to make it seem as though thank God for that administration during that time to join that facility, we want to know what were the reasons. Having gone through such a devastating hurricane in 2004, what were the reasons? Why did it take you so long to join the facility? So don't try to make this a political issue. Don't try to make this seem as though to beat your chest and to boast about something, Mr. Speaker. But we're not going there, but I just wanted to place that on the record. Took them 8 years.
This thing, I just have to laugh because the child have no idea what she's speaking about. And trying to speak on authority. Not this one, but not that one, not the one before. No. But it was the NNP administration after Hurricane Ivan that devastated Grenada and other islands in the Caribbean that the CRIF started. And Grenada was one of the first countries to join from inception in 2007. Now, these people don't pay attention. They have no clue what is going on around them because the CRIF gentleman, I think he's a chairman, he held more than one press conference with members of the cabinet. In one instance, the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister sitting there at the head table. You're not paying attention? And the gentleman said that Grenada was one of the first country to sign on in 2007. Ivan was in 2004. Right? She said, what took, I'm asking the question boldly, what took them 8 years to join? And don't beat your chest. All the antics. And she never clue what she's saying. Everything she said there was wrong. And nobody stopped her. Nobody corrected her. The little boy next to her sit down grinning. Either he think it's funny what she's saying, he believes what she's saying and that is funny, or he knew what she's saying is wrong and he's like, fool, go ahead. Be grinning next to her. Let's hear what the gentleman from CRIF had to say.
Just to remind you, CRIF was established in the year 2007 following Hurricane Ivan in the year 2007, and I know Grenadians will not forget Ivan given the devastation that that particular tropical cyclone caused on your country. And Grenada was in fact the poster child for CRIF, and Grenada has been a member of CRIF from the inception, and I'm talking about from 2007.
Now, 8 years later, from 2004, NDC was in office. That child was a member of the youth arm then. NDC was in office. What we know about CRIF then, NDC had no clue that that was happening. As you heard the gentleman, and this NNP, the NNP administration signed on in 2007 at the inception. They didn't blink. They didn't wait a day later. They signed on, and he said it in other forums, was one of the first country to sign on. And that is why we could have gotten $118 million to take us out of a deficit that we was in. The monies were spent as revenue. That is why, because the NNP administration in 2007 signed on to CRIF, and NDC now took the largest payout ever. And so we got $118 million from CRIF. They said it, not me, in their reports, that the money went into the transformational fund as revenue and was spent to pay bills. Yeah. And to take us out of the deficit that we was in at that point. Right? And then there was this, the commoners.
But I just want to say a special morning to my colleagues on this side as well as the other side of the House, through you, Mr. Speaker, and to all of the commoners in chamber with us this morning.
Go and look it up. Look up the meaning of commoners. And then there is this.
I just want to reiterate and to place on record, Mr. Speaker, that our ministry, as well as it has a mandate and an obligation in terms of the local context, there is also an international context to it. And if we don't go out and speak among the big dogs to mobilize our funding, most of the things that
the big dogs, and she denied she said so when the Speaker of the House pulled up on her, and he just went along with it. But these things are recorded. It's in the Hansard. And this is the kind of thing we get from this young lady from time and time again. She showed up in the parliament the other day in a big jersey for a dress. You know, I mean, there should be some form of intervention. There should be some form of intervention. But it was not the first time Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, as leader, unprincipled, publicly promoting profanity, and has his members, young, middle-aged, elders, pastors, prayer warriors alike, proudly responding, disrespecting our mothers. Again, the best Mitchell man, the perfect role model, even called by some baby Jesus. In a post on Facebook, a senior member of the NDC had this to say. He said, Grenadians, if at this time, and that was from Mr. Rondell Robinson, Grenadians, if at this time you don't recognize that PM Deacon Mitchell is a gift from God, then wake up. Thank you, Lord. I thought we all were gifts from God, aren't we? Aren't we all gifts from God, Randall? Now, this is what our God-sent leader had to say at a national rally during the 2022 election campaign.
And let me say this. We are a Christian society. If all you like Brother Lacrette didn't tell all you that, but Brother Lacrette is a pastor. And Brother Lacrette will tell you the greatest virtue is forgiveness. So Father, forgive him, for he know not what he speaks of. Because you know what is susu. I know what is susu. And if you didn't know, you could Google it. And I will tell you what Google will tell you. First thing, it identifies it as a noun. And it identifies it as a West Indian word. A West Indian word indigenous to the West Indies. And it tells you this is what a susu is. Where a group of people come together and with their little savings, they all put it together And at the end of the week or the end of the month, they take that hand and they give it to a member of the SUSU group so that they could use it to finance their children's education, so that they could use it to pay down some debt that they had, so that they could use it to buy the little stove or the little ironing board that they've been wanting, but they needed the help of their brothers and sisters to come together in the SUSU to make it work. So you could call me Susu. I will accept the Susu because I am going to help the people of Grenada to put the little one money together and ensure that we can give it to the next person and improve their lives. So as I said in Rukane Junction last night, and I want you to join me in the chant, Bang does bust, but Susu doesn't. Bang does bust, but Susu doesn't. Bang does bust, but Susu doesn't. So take Susu in you.
There he goes again, disrespecting our mothers. Take Susu in you. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But it's obvious he don't know what Susu is. Because if Susu does bust again, when a man take his hand early and he decide he don't have no money to keep paying for the rest of the weeks or months, what happened? Susu bust. Susu bust. Sometimes the poor person who collecting the money, who what they say own the Susu, does have to end up putting in the money and pay back the man, the people, and Susu does bust all the time. So he obviously don't know what a Susu is. You understand? He Google it and he gets something, and now he come there talking as an authority on Susu. But what is important here is the trend. The trend that our prime minister, our leader, think it's okay to disrespect the women of this country, the mothers of this country, all the time. All the time. It's a pattern for him. I don't understand what joy he gets out of that. Him and his members and supporters. What joy they get out of that. Now, I'm going to end up on kind of a sad note with what's going on in Cloger, St. John's, and if from what I've been getting information from persons in the village, and so if they're not careful, they're going to be cut off from what you want to say, maybe civilization, from the rest of Grenada. And it's going to be very difficult for them to commute if they have to go to Guave, for instance. They would have to go through St. Andrew, go to Grenville, and come back around to come to Guave. And Guave is right there from Cloger. So it's a serious thing. It's also not a good thing for the administration and where they are, being broke and all, and to have to spend that kind of money. And the rain just start. The rain just start. But it is, as a result, an indictment really on what is taking place in the Ministry of Infrastructure. And it saddens me because there's no guidance. There is no real work coming from that ministry. And they have advisors. We were told proudly on Ride Along by Mr. Rodney George that he's an advisor to the Prime Minister in the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I'm sure they have several more, right? Where the engineers. But this there, if we think Molyneux cost us overruns, well, we in for some big overruns coming out from there, coming out from Cloger. Our ministries of government are running on incompetence from the onset. Wrong pegs in square holes. And no amount of leads and advisors haven't been able to help out that situation. In fact, in many cases, the advisors needed to be advised. They needed advisors themselves. We have situations where party hawks were put in managerial positions and persons have been put over them to help manage the institutions and entities. In other words, the managing director has a manager who is really doing the job. So why do we need that managing director? Job for the boys, right? And then you could understand why some people are on Facebook 24/7, managing directors and all, protecting their turf. Because without them, you wouldn't go home with a big paycheck for doing nothing, absolutely nothing, but being on Facebook on a day. On a day. Case in point, the Postal Corporation. There is no end in sight when it comes to this load of incompetence that is piled up on us as a nation, something we've never seen before. And I guess we would probably never see it again after this administration leaves office or get voted out of office, should I say. The minister, because they should have left already, yeah? They should have left already. They're waiting to be voted out. The Minister of Health or for Health, ministered by an accountant who has failed twice in managing his own business, Excellence Full Farm, whose doors are shut again. Can't pay staff, disconnected by Grenlack, amongst other managerial issues. Had to close its doors months ago. Our health sector needs proper administrative management skills, which is obvious. The minister, Philip Tellisford, do not possess. And we all know he doesn't know a thing about the practical side of the medical side of it, public health, biology, anything of the sort. We know that. We have a grocer to run the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation / infrastructure, managing more infrastructure projects than the minister and Ministry of Infrastructure. As I understand it, he holds a degree in accounting as well, which was used primarily to embezzle in the jobs he had before. Minister Andy Williams, known for corruption within the cabinet and the administration, busybody, bubbly, people's person, charismatic. Those are the adjectives used to describe him. I might add fairly so, yeah. Doing nothing. He reminds me of Peter David. All nice and bubbly thing, moving through bubbling. Nothing. No substance. Speaking to, you hear them saying that, I've heard it quite recently in a live, that Grandens is like Dubai. And they're actually giving Andy Williams a praise for it. Andy has done nothing in Grand Anse in the south of the island to make Grandens look like Dubai. The businesses, the hotels, the restaurants have nothing to do with those things. He met them there. And the point is, he actually took us on a bus tour and showed us what he achieved in the South. So when I hear Andy doing so much and Andy, the man shows us 2 unfinished roads, 1 finished road that going up to Guankai, and the area where the big tank is going to go in Guankai to bring Guankai water to Guankai. And an unfinished building on Dusty Highway where he's going to put the medical center and a fire truck. He fenced the spring school. Well, he couldn't dare pass by the, the cliff project where he took the bribe for. And the field, the bushes where Project Polaris is going to be, the hospital, and then the fourth in the Fort George. Those was his achievements. So let me hear what he did to cause Grandans to look like Dubai, and what everybody outside of Grandans do, outside of the South, the people in the rest of the constituency, wish he was their candidate, their caretaker, or representative, so to speak. Yeah? He is our best man. Because for them to want him, I saw somebody in the comments say they wish he was the representative in St. David. That one, that was funny. That one was really funny. And then we have the Minister of Tourism and Culture with a degree in agriculture. Non-performer as Minister of Agriculture, you know that's where he started off with a degree. He was shuffled into the Ministry of Tourism and Culture. Why? I guess because he was a once upon a time Calypsonian. So then it's I guess Apawa or Gun could be Minister of Culture if it's because he was a Calypsonian. Tourism. Let me try to get out of this mood here. Tourism. Enjoying the perks it comes with. Travel, parties, the VIPs, dancing in the streets.
Sugar and you want that tango follow. Right now in basic mental luxing, them men who do it, can I hold, can I hold, let's come on and never see them know. Can I hold, let's come on and never see them know. And Nancy's
Junior and senior, right there, having a good time. Then there is his junior, Minister Quince Britain. 6 of one and half a dozen of the next. You be the judge.
Of course, everyone know I contested the seat in St. Mark. I did not lost.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I did not lose. No, I didn't lose.
Jesus
I
Lord.
only was not able to be the member of parliament represented in the lower house by 475 votes. So I don't consider that a loss at all.
I'll no comment. No comment. But what really went on with the CES program, that the money purse was taken away from Mr. Britain and given to Andrea St. Bernard. This is as good a time to ask about the success stories or lack thereof of the CES program. What came out of the millions of dollars, I think in excess of $20 million spent on the CES program? We hear of studios by journalists, we call them accredited journalists, open studios. We hear of salons, we hear of, I don't know, Ruba Chubin. We hear of, I mean, you just name it. But we never heard or saw anything to tell us this was grant monies given to mostly supporters and members, even executive members of the NDC, Yeah, right? And we hear nothing. We got nothing. It's just monies given away. As when the Prime Minister and they give out monies to the farmers, the Prime Minister said each time, it's yours to do what you want with it. He said you can spend it on agriculture if you want, but it's yours to do what you want with it. So now we move to Tantiglo. And there's a method to my madness. I'm coming down to, because you're wondering, I start off with closure and where I'm going. I'm coming. You know, I never fail you yet. Tantiglo, Ministry of Social Development and Ministry of Housing. Now, Tantiglo, my advice is to keep social development. You're doing a good job there. And drop the housing. Drop the housing. Besides, there are just too much corruption going on in these housing projects, and I don't want you a part of that. I want you to come in clean and leave clean. Right, Auntie Glo? And we know, we played the clip earlier on where you're suffering through this housing thing and what's going on. So drop the housing. And then there is the Minister of Mental Hospital, Youth and Sports. Mental hospital, fine. I have no problem with that. Stay there, girl. Well suited. But youth and sports, in the voice of the St. Lucians, a social worker. She does nothing about running a Ministry of Youth and Sports. Every week or every other week, what we've seen is an award ceremony for the youth. So if you tell me show up, I have to get an award, I'm going to show up. So that's the trick behind the whole trying to pull out the youths to say they're doing so much for the youths. I have seen, probably in excess of a dozen awards ceremonies thus far. And, well, sports, we're in big trouble if that continues. With it comes the Minister Lennox Andrew and the Ministry of Agriculture. All I'll say here is not because one is from the rural parish or a rural parish that it makes them capable of being a Minister of Agriculture. No. Certainly not in this situation. And agriculture is much too an important pillar for us to be ignoring it. Much too. We have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who accompanies the Prime Minister on his trips, probably the best suited one to do so in the bunch, and sometimes travels on his own. The Prime Minister, since Nolin Grong he sends Minister Andal on some of the trips that he would have gone on before. Here's Minister Andal on one such trip.
Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down will come baby, cradle and all.
Fighting to stay awake. Synonymous with what we have been coming from members of his, or what you've been hearing from members of his constituency. And then we have Cinti Daughter, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Consumer Affairs, Labor, and Attorney General. Too many ministries for an incompetent individual. A very poor performing Ministry of Labor, Consumer Affairs, and Attorney General. Maybe, just maybe, she should be left with legal affairs alone. Well, if not her, who? We don't have another person there. Her positions are conflicting and should not have been put together at all. But one can understand there is a lack of capable and competent personnel in that cabinet. Then there's the Minister of Finance, Dennis Cornwall, probably the most suited for his position, has his personal issues that needs attention, but all in all, he gets a C or maybe a C plus. Karine James, Minister for Climate Resilience, the Environment, and Renewable Energy. Insolent, rude, disrespectful, obnoxious, promiscuous. MTV brought a news item interviewing vendors in the tongue of Guave. Let's hear from the vendors.
Well, sale is down right now. Country is down. The place is dead. Most time for the week. Sometimes we make $100. For 1 week? For the week. Most time for the week. Well, it kind of bit slow. It kind of be a bit slow. The things is slow.
The kind is dead, you know, like for a long time, you know. We just here trying to pick up the pieces, you know.
We have a lot of people in the place, but the spending fee is not there.
Minister Karine James, and member of St. John, which includes the tongue of God, made a Facebook post after seeing the news item, and nothing these guys say that is false. We are feeling it in retail. Small businesses are crying out, but some big ones as well. It is bad. Do I blame the government for the entire thing? Maybe not. But they're in office and things are bad. We know the internationally it is as well, and so it trickles down. But they are not even trying to help us to cushion the effects. Nothing. We on our own. We on our own. And that is where proper leadership comes in. Proper leadership comes in. And we're not getting it from this NDC administration. So, the little rude girl put up on Facebook, watch dumbness, in reference to MTV. Sorry, MTV News. Grenada, take the win for back of the class. Sorry, MTV News Grenada. Take the win for the back of the class. This is from Minister Karine James. Instead of trying to go to the vendors in her constituency, speak to them, give them a little bit of hope. She calling them or MTV, I don't know who done. Karine James, the fisher folks of St. John's, would like to know what was the criteria for picking the 15 fishermen from Guave, giving them vouchers of $1,000 each for Island Water World to pick up gifts of their choice. They also want to know who the ghost voucher belonged to. The voucher with no name that the cart was being filled up for. Then comes Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, Minister of Infrastructure, Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation, and Transformation, National Security, Home Affairs, Public Administration, Information and Disaster Management. 10 ministries. In my mind, not even capable or any capable or competent individual can successfully spearhead and manage 10 ministries and still micromanage all the other ministries. And for the most part, he's mute on the issues. And it is also quite clear that ministries are run by permanent secretaries and staff of the ministries, the public workers. Clearly, the Minister of Infrastructure is operating like a runaway train, a ministry of bad decisions, wrong choices, and a high level of incompetence. Throughout the island, bridges and roadways deteriorating. I mean, they're bad everywhere, and nothing Nothing is happening. We know of the Cliff Road, Morlinier, the Clarkscourt Bay. I mean, you just name it. And of course, now we have to deal with the Cloger Road project. We had mudslides already in Granite Tank. Road they just widened. They cut back the banks and did nothing to protect it. I guess no testing was done. And the soil is not stiff. So that done slide down over the little wall they put down below. I don't know if that's what we call it. The little thing, little piece of wall down below and cover up that. And of course, as I said, there's Cloger, which is vanishing daily, even while the workers are there trying to secure it.
Kishan Gittins, foreman as supervisor on Fari Construction Company, FCSL.
Give us an appreciation of where we are and the reason that you all signed a contract here in the first instance.
Well, in the first instance, we came up here to do 110 feet of wall to protect the road because it was slipping, right? And box drain on the next side of the road because of the water that was soaking through the road, right? So initially we came up here to do 110 feet of road, roughly around 22 feet high.
And during the process, explain to us further how your project expanded.
Okay, so during the process, right, when we start cutting, we realized that we had to go deeper than initially had to go. So in that process, we realized that the road starts slipping more. So we had extended on the wall to cover the area that's slipping, and that is the reason why we reached closer to the house that is in thing now. But we come up with a solution to protect the house through the ministry. We came and we shelving the wall, and we're gonna put a wing wall to protect the house.
In your excavation works, did you identify any of the contributing factors for the slippage of the land?
Yes, when we start cutting, we realize that the area up here, you have a lot of springs. So anybody who know Cloger area, they're gonna know that this area up here, you have a lot of springs. So when we start excavating, we realize that where we start cutting on the top side of the road, you have a spring that was soaking through, and that was causing the land to slip. So that is why we had to go deeper with the cutting of the road. So we end up now with a greater challenge on our hand where you have a house involved, right? But the experience we have through the ministry, we came up to a solution yesterday where we're gonna shelve the area and we're gonna put a wing wall to protect the house. And if anybody know what they call the gabion basket, we're gonna put a gabion basket there so the water, what is in the land, because of the mold that is there, it's gonna take out all the water in the land. So you're gonna protect the house.
My name is Trevor.
Trevor what?
Golly.
Mr. Gully, how long have you been residing here at Cloger?
I could say all the days of my life. I'm born and bred up here.
As a resident, speak to us about what's happening here.
Well, yeah, as you see, after burial, he had a slippage here. Right, a small slippage where the land started to pull. So them come 3 weeks ago now, them came here to do this work. And from the time they start digging this foundation to get the whole road just began walking. Well, as you see, they live below and they come on top here to see how they could control the water, because as I see, you had two main drain coming from up there, and this drain constantly running. It never dry.
So it's a spring?
Yeah, it's a spring. Right. You had some invert on the side here, but apparently no, them invert was this so long that the water was passing under. So all the water slipping down. So that was causing all you see this the runnage of this. And more they try to cut to thing is more coming down, everything just coming down. As you see, They have to dump here to make piece of road, otherwise vehicle couldn't able to pass because the complete road has gone. Yeah, the original road has gone. Yeah, it's a good project. Yeah, I see it as a good project. Because if they didn't come and do it in the future, we're in a road. So it's a good project.
And also, as a result of what's happening, we're seeing that where you're living, there is some slippage there as well, but government has begun the process of addressing that. Explain how do you feel about that? Because now the work that they're going to go and do close to your property is going to enable safety.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the place though belongs to is my nephew, but I live there, I taking care of the farm. And as I tell him, I say, against they getting the road because the road is important. The important thing is you want to know that they secure in the place. Yeah. And I think, well, they come to an agreement what they go do already. Yeah, so we're looking out to see.
So did you explain to him what is going to be happening?
Yeah, I explained everything to him. I think he will be soon. He might come soon. If they didn't come to do that day now, where the land already had a little slide there. After a couple of years, he might have just continue going and he would have to spend our money there. So right now, the guy is up. You say, because in the future, he must have to do that. Yeah, because the land running there. Because if you go right there, if you watch right there, you have a live water running right there. And the ground, right now, going across there. And I don't know where the water coming out from because when we was digging a foundation from the house, we never met no water there. So I don't know, where the water coming from. But if you couldn't know, you seen it live running in the street. Yeah. So the water is the whole problem.
The job seems like it's above the foreman's pay grade. Where's the contractor? Where's the CTO in the Ministry of Infrastructure? Poor chap. The job is way bigger than him as well. He has a potential, but experience matters in a position like that. Who are the engineers? Where's the Minister of Infrastructure? He don't know nothing about infrastructure. Whoa, we in trouble. Another wrong peg in a square hole. Over the past couple of days, the slippage worsened, making the closure road impassable for vehicles, stone put down for the pedestrians, which in itself, in my mind, is very dangerous. Now, here's a gentleman who knows what he's talking about. He's a geostructural engineer. He's Canadian.
Okay, I'm going to give you a lunch brief, and this is going to be quick, but this is very significant. And listen to me very carefully. Obviously, I've got to educate a bit, so to speak, the Grenadian people about what is taking place right here at that closure project. So that way they can actually salvage this project and maybe call for a little clarity and accountability. And hopefully then the right thing will be done and this will head in the right direction and people's lives may be saved. Now, this is a crucial warning. Do not, just as I warned you on the inception of this, and I said, look, no vehicle should be passing that area. Nobody heeded it. I'm warning you again. This is still a very dangerous situation. And I'm doing this out of genuine love and at the same time out of fear. And the fear is that somebody might get hurt. So listen up. Now, as I've said in previous videos, it's quite obvious that no subsurface soil investigation was done on that project. Now, I want you to understand what that means and the implications thereof. Now, it means that if no subsurface soil investigation was done, no boring log was done, no test pit was done, then guess what? How the heck do you design a retaining wall? Because the concept of bearing pressure, there's concept of lateral earth pressure that are significant concepts in retaining wall design. And the bearing pressure of the soil is given to you by the geotech guy, the guy who does the boring log investigation. So this is a question of safety here, serious safety. So we're building a retaining wall, but did we take these things into consideration? Do we know the bearing pressure of the existing soil? Because that has a significant impact on the design of the retaining wall. So I just hope that some sort of soil investigation was done prior to the design of this retaining wall. If that is the case, then fine. But as rule of thumb, understand that, I'm seeing between 50 and 20 feet heights in some cases. But I want you to understand, if you're building a T-wall, reinforced T-wall, rule of thumb for retaining walls, rule of thumb, the width of the footing, the width of the foundation should be at least half times the height. Okay? So if you're building a 10-foot wall, guess what? You should have at least a 5-foot wide footing. So imagine if you're dealing with 15 to 20 foot. If you're dealing with 20 foot, you're talking about at least a 10-foot footing. Okay? These are massive footings. And keep in mind, again, this is an extraordinary situation. This is a situation where you have extra loading from vehicles passing by. So this is not a normal situation. I want my people to understand this. Now, this also is a unique situation. This is not just a regular retaining wall, just holding up soil. This is a retaining wall that's holding up a roadway. What does that mean? Then there is a concept called surcharge, which means additional loading condition. Vehicles are passing over the soil on the roadway. So that is an additional load. This is something that has to be considered in the design of the retaining wall. So you're not building a regular retaining wall. You're building a retaining wall that is going to be experiencing surcharge loading. That is significant. So, as a matter of advice, please have people who know what they're doing take a look at this so that nobody gets hurt. Even if you build the structure and it's not properly built and it's not built to sustain the loads that are going to be applied to it, there will be a problem in the future. A word to the wise is sufficient. So, guten Tag. Genießen Sie.
I hope the Prime Minister, who's a Minister of Infrastructure, the CTO, all his advisors, and the engineers in the Ministry of Infrastructure just listened and took heed. Now take a look at this. It's scary. A villager walking to work on rocks put down to them to walk on, also showing that the cracks in the road is widening and that soil continues to slip. Now, here's a close-up. A look at the property where that house is sitting complements Mikey Life. So as we see, folks, this is a serious situation happening in Clogier. The rains that falling doesn't help. The people doing the job, the people doesn't seem to have a clue what they're doing. If you listen to the engineer that spoke, and he's asking himself, who are these people?
And what the hell is going on with the judgment? Who are you guys hiring to do this work? Who are your consultants? Where are these people? Why are you paying them thousands of dollars? Who are these people that would advise you in such a horrible way?
Who are these people? Rodney George is one. He say he's the advisor to the Ministry and Minister of Infrastructure. Anyhow, now for solutions.
For solutions, for future purposes, if you're doing a project of that nature, the first thing you need, okay, is a proper base map survey showing all the existing utilities, showing the extent of the project area, and on that survey should show locations of test bits or boring log, which will give the contractor an idea of what sort of soil, what sort of water table that he or she is dealing with, so they can make the necessary arrangements during construction. And let's go back again. That being said, it's quite obvious that if you're going to do a project of that nature, that you must consider work zone traffic control. And that is simple. How do you control the traffic during construction? Obviously, this was a project where no vehicle was supposed to pass on that roadway because there was an absence of temporary shoring. So as I've said before in previous videos, vehicles are passing on that roadway. It's only going to increase the lateral pressure on the soil and cause failure, as was predicted. It's not a miracle. It's not like magic. It's like, oh my God, what happened? No, it was obviously predictable. The only way you'd have been able to allow traffic to pass in that area during construction is if you had temporary show or brace the roadway. And there are many ways to do that. Okay, I don't know what you guys have available in Grenada, but you could have done some sheet piling if you have sheet piling. I'm sure you do. You could have done a solid pile and log and wall, which is something that it's just common practice in shoring during construction. And that is not a complicated thing. Okay, that is not a complicated thing. I'm sure you have wood beams, and I'm sure you have steel I-column sections in Grenada. If you're sure the embankment, if you're sure the roadway during construction and the building of that retaining wall, none of this would have happened. For crying out loud, you could have used a rake assuring system. At least put something temporarily in place. And it's quite obvious there was absolutely a lack of supervision during this project. Because if there was anybody from the ministries that came out to that site and saw what was going on, anyone with a little bit of experience would say, no. This has to stop. Let's shut it down. And let's make sure we put the right measures in place to continue this construction. Now you quite possibly have a man who's going to lose his house or half of his house. I mean, I've seen a video where the step is already broken and there's several soil cracks around the man's property. This house is going to go. If something is not done immediately, this house is a goner. So not only do you waste a bunch of money during the construction, now you have to pay this man, I don't know what, $300,000-$400,000, whatever the house costs, if it goes. And that's a very high likelihood at this stage. So the bottom line is this: stop making this young lady look bad. And to the administration, to the upper echelon leadership, okay, please.
And of course, here is a final plea to the authorities of the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Now listen to me, and listen to me very carefully. Now everyone is talking about trying to finish the retaining wall that is being built at Clogier. Now I am telling you, the most critical emergent situation right now is to provide temporary shoring in the area. If you do not provide temporary shoring right now, you may not have a slope upon which to build a road. Do we understand? You need to temporarily support the slope right now. And this can only be done right now by temporary shoring, immediate temporary shoring. So I want you to understand this. This is common sense. This makes sense. The retaining wall is a long-term fix. The immediate short-term fix to stop the soil from collapsing is temporary shoring. If you do not stem the tide of slippage, guess what's going to happen? It's going to continue to fail and collapse into the area that you're building the retaining wall. And that will be disruptive to the work that you're doing. You must temporarily support the embankment. And that man's house cannot wait for you to finish some sort of reinforced concrete retaining wall. And I know this man probably has an attachment to his house, but somebody should advise this gentleman, do not stay in that house in this current situation. Please. This is an emergent situation. This is an emergent critical situation. Temporary shoring has to be done right now to salvage what is left. And maybe at this stage, your quickest shoring system might be a soldier pile and lagging wall. So whatever you got to do, mobilize right now and install some temporary shoring, soldier pile and lagging wall, ASAP. And yes, I am repeating myself, so hopefully it sinks in.
As I close, I leave you with excerpts from a posting captioned titled Concrete Corruption and Blueprint Betrayals, Grenada's Infrastructure Implosion by the People's Pen of Protest. Let's call it what it is, an infrastructure industry infected with incompetence, dripping in deception and drowning in disaster, designs of disaster, blueprints from the bottom of the barrel. Who the hell is designing our national projects? We've watched in disbelief as multi-million dollars engineering designs collapse under their own foolishness, forcing designs mid-construction like children redoing homework they never understood in the first place. This is not just about infrastructure. This is tantamount to this entire Deacon Mitchell-led administration. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, trying to keep them honest. Thank you for viewing yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye now. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.